Your eyes are dying slowly, and you are completely unaware of it. Not dramatically, not all at once, but right now, today, in this ordinary moment where you are simply watching a video on a screen, processes are unfolding inside the most delicate biological structures in your body that are quietly, incrementally, and in many cases irreversibly changing the quality of your vision. And the worst part is not that it is happening. The worst part is that most of it was preventable, and nobody told you clearly enough, early enough, in plain enough language what was actually going on. Today, that changes, because what you are about to hear about your eyes, about the hidden forces working against them right now, is going to stay with you long after this video ends. Most people live with a deeply comfortable assumption about their vision. They assume that their eyes will basically work until age takes them, that the slow decline is inevitable, that glasses and stronger prescriptions are just the natural progression of getting older, and that beyond avoiding obvious hazards, there is not much else to be done. That assumption feels reasonable because it is so widely shared. Almost everyone around you believes the same thing, but shared assumptions are not the same as accurate ones, and in the case of eye health, this particular assumption is costing people something they can never get back. Vision loss to preventable causes is still lost vision. And the science of ocular health has now made it abundantly clear that the majority of what drives vision deterioration in modern adults is not the passive, unavoidable consequence of time. It is the cumulative result of specific, identifiable, modifiable factors that are operating in your life right now, silently, without symptoms, and without mercy. There are 6 hidden factors that the research keeps returning to. 6 things that are either already damaging your eyes or laying the biological groundwork for damage that will show up years from now. And before we go through all of them, I need you to hold on to something because there is one factor on this list that will genuinely catch you off guard. It has nothing to do with light, nothing to do with screens, nothing to do with anything you have ever associated with your eyes. It is something happening in a completely different part of your body, something most people never connect to their vision in 1,000 years, and yet the research linking it to ocular disease is so consistent and so significant that leading ophthalmologists are now calling it one of the most important emerging areas in eye health science. We will get there, but everything else needs to come first, because the last one only lands properly when you understand the full picture. Let's begin with screens, and let's go deeper than you have probably gone before, because this is not about eye strain, and it is not about remembering to blink more often. The real concern with chronic screen exposure is what blue light, the high-energy visible light emitted by every digital screen and LED light source in your life, does to the cells at the back of your eye over time. Your retina contains photoreceptor cells, the rods and cones that translate light into the signals your brain interprets as vision. Behind those photoreceptors sits a layer of cells called the retinal pigment epithelium, and its job is to support the photoreceptors, clear their metabolic waste, and maintain the health of the tissue that makes sight possible. Blue light generates free radicals inside retinal cells. The retinal pigment epithelium has its own antioxidant systems to manage this, but those systems were designed for natural levels of light exposure, not for the 8, 10, or 12 hours of screen time that has become completely normalized in modern life. When the oxidative burden exceeds the capacity of those defenses, damage accumulates. Slowly, silently, without any sensation whatsoever. And this cumulative oxidative damage to the retinal tissue is now considered a contributing environmental factor to age-related macular degeneration, the leading cause of permanent, irreversible central vision loss in adults. The screens are not just tiring your eyes at the end of a long day. They are potentially degrading the cellular infrastructure of your retina 1 hour at a time. The second hidden factor is blood sugar, and this connection is so underappreciated outside of diabetic care that it deserves to be said as plainly as possible. The blood vessels inside your eyes are the smallest, most delicate capillaries in the entire human circulatory system. They are extraordinarily fine, extraordinarily sensitive, and extraordinarily vulnerable to a process called glycation, which is what happens when excess sugar molecules in the bloodstream chemically attach to proteins and alter their structure. In the retinal blood vessels, glycation causes the vessel walls to weaken, leak, and lose their functional integrity. In people with diagnosed diabetes, this process progresses to diabetic retinopathy, a leading cause of blindness. But what happens in people who are not diabetic, who simply live on a modern diet that keeps blood sugar chronically elevated throughout most of the day, is that the same process operates at a slower pace and a lower level of visibility. Microdamage accumulates in the retinal vasculature over years. Blood supply to the photoreceptors becomes subtly compromised. Vision changes that feel like ordinary aging are in meaningful part the downstream consequence of years of dietary sugar doing structural damage to the most fragile blood vessels in your body. This is happening in millions of people who have never once been told that the food they eat is affecting their eyes. The third factor is chronic systemic inflammation. And to understand why this matters for your eyes, you need to understand something fundamental about what your eyes actually are. Your eyes are not standalone organs. They are extensions of your central nervous system, connected to your brain by the optic nerve, bathed in the same biological environment as every other neural tissue in your body. When your body is in a state of chronic low-grade inflammation driven by poor diet, disrupted sleep, gut microbiome imbalance, or chronic psychological stress, that inflammatory environment reaches your eyes. Inflammatory proteins circulating in the bloodstream affect the retinal tissue, the optic nerve, the drainage structures that regulate intraocular pressure, and the glands responsible for producing the tear film that protects the surface of the eye. Chronic inflammation is now a recognized contributing factor to glaucoma, dry eye disease, uveitis, and accelerated macular degeneration. The eye doctor examining you can see the structures of your eye with extraordinary precision. What that examination cannot reveal is the inflammatory environment those structures are living in every single day, quietly degrading tissue that has no capacity to regenerate once it is gone. The fourth hidden factor is something the eye depends on entirely from outside sources, and that a startling percentage of people are simply not getting enough of. Lutein and zeaxanthin are two carotenoid compounds that concentrate in the macula, the central region of your retina responsible for the sharp, detailed, high-resolution vision you use for reading, recognizing faces, and seeing the world in focus. These compounds form the macular pigment, a natural optical filter that absorbs damaging blue light before it reaches the photoreceptors, and they serve simultaneously as the primary antioxidant defense system within the retinal tissue itself. Your body cannot make lutein or zeaxanthin, not a single molecule. Every unit of macular pigment you have came from your diet. And when dietary intake of these compounds is consistently low, the macula becomes less protected, oxidative damage accumulates more rapidly, and the risk of macular degeneration climbs in ways that are measurable and documented. Large-scale studies have found that people with the highest lutein and zeaxanthin intake have up to 40% lower risk of advanced macular degeneration than those with the lowest intake. These compounds are found in eggs, dark leafy greens, and certain orange and yellow vegetables. They are not rare, they are not expensive. They are simply foods that most people are not eating in anywhere near sufficient quantities because nobody ever explained clearly enough what was at stake. The fifth factor is sleep, and the ocular consequences of chronic sleep deprivation are more serious and more specific than almost anyone realizes. During sleep, the eyes undergo restoration that cannot happen during waking hours. Intraocular pressure follows rhythms tied to sleep cycles, and disruptions to those cycles are associated with pressure elevations that over time increase glaucoma risk. The tear film, which protects the corneal surface and maintains optical clarity, requires sleep to properly replenish, and consistently poor sleep drives the kind of chronic dry eye and surface inflammation that progressively degrades visual comfort and quality. The glymphatic system, your brain's overnight waste clearance mechanism, operates in the tissue surrounding the optic nerve, removing inflammatory debris that accumulates during waking hours. Every night of inadequate sleep is a night when that clearance is incomplete, and the burden carried forward into the next day is a little heavier than it should be. The cumulative effect of years of shortened or fragmented sleep on ocular tissue is something most people never factor into their understanding of why their eyes are changing. And now the sixth factor, the one that will catch you completely off guard: gut health. The connection between your gut microbiome and your eyes is one of the most extraordinary and least known relationships in all of modern medicine. Your gut microbiome is the primary regulator of systemic inflammation in your body. It produces compounds that either suppress or amplify the inflammatory signals circulating through your bloodstream, and because your eyes are profoundly sensitive to inflammatory conditions, the state of your gut microbiome has a direct and measurable influence on ocular health. Research comparing the gut microbiomes of patients with age-related macular degeneration to healthy controls has found striking differences in microbiome composition. People with the disease show significantly reduced microbial diversity and lower levels of the anti-inflammatory bacterial species that keep systemic inflammation in check. The gut and the eye feel like they exist in completely separate universes of your body. But inflammation is the invisible thread connecting them, and the gut microbiome is pulling that thread every single day. What you feed your gut bacteria is influencing what happens to the tissue at the back of your eyes. That is not a metaphor. That is a biological reality that the research is now making impossible to ignore. 6 factors: chronic blue light exposure, elevated blood sugar, systemic inflammation, nutritional deficiency, sleep deprivation, and gut health. Every single one of them is modifiable. Every single one of them is responding right now to the choices you make daily, not dramatically, not overnight, but consistently, cumulatively, in ways that determine whether your eyes at 60 or 70 or 80 are still giving you the world in full clarity or have already quietly surrendered ground that can never be recovered. So here's the question I want you to answer in the comments right now, and I want the honest answer, not the comfortable one. Which of these 6 factors are you currently ignoring in your own life, and which one shocked you the most today? Tell me below, because your answer might be the thing that wakes someone else up who needed to hear it.